Welcome. I'm truly grateful to have you here. Please, make yourself comfortable and take your time. This story was crafted with care, dedication, and deep respect for your attention. I hope it brings you joy, reflection, and perhaps even a touch of nostalgia. Once again, thank you for sharing a moment of your day with me. The year is 1347, and you are standing on cobbled streets that could be Venice, Florence, or any burgeoning Italian city. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight of grand new buildings or the distant chime of a campanile, but a pervasive, almost physical stench. It clings to your clothes, seeps into your very pores. A cloying mix of human waste, animal offal, and the acrid smoke of countless wood fires. It's the smell of 1,000 lives crammed together, of ambition and squalor coexisting in a single suffocating breath. You pull your rough wool cloak tighter, not for warmth, but as if to filter the air, a futile gesture. Your boots sink slightly into the perpetual, damp mud that coats everything, a slurry of rainwater, and whatever else has been tossed from windows above. Ahead, the narrow street is a river of bodies, surging and swirling. Merchants shout, porters heave impossibly large bundles, and beggars, their faces etched with the city's hardship, extend skeletal hands. You try to keep your footing, jostled by shoulders, elbows, and the occasional hoof of a passing donkey. A child, no older than 5, weaves through the crowd with a tray of fresh bread, its sweetness momentarily battling the dominant odors, a stark and fleeting contrast. You turn down an even narrower alley, seeking a shortcut, only to find the air grow thicker, heavier. Here, the buildings lean in, almost touching overhead, blocking out the sky. The waste gutters run openly, a dark, slow current carrying unimaginable things. You instinctively hold your breath, your stomach clenching. A woman haggles fiercely over a pile of fish, their glassy eyes staring up from a wooden cart, adding their own metallic tang to the air. You notice the sweat on her brow, the grim determination in her eyes. Everyone here is fighting, in their own way, against the sheer overwhelming assault of the city. You see the glint of new silks in a shop window, a splash of vibrant red and gold, a testament to burgeoning trade and wealth, yet just beside it, a man empties a bucket of slops directly into the street, indifferent to the passers-by. It's an assault on every sense, this urban explosion. You feel the constant pressure of bodies, the uneven stones beneath your feet, the chill that somehow persists, despite the overwhelming human warmth. The progress, the rebirth so often spoken of, feels less like a clean slate, and more like an overcrowded feverish dream, perpetually on the verge of collapsing under its own weight and filth. Yet, amidst it all, life pulses with an undeniable, raw energy. If this story resonates with you, please like and subscribe. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it there? Share in the comments. You realize that even amidst such overwhelming unpleasantness, the human spirit finds a way to adapt, to push forward, to simply breathe in the face of what seems unbearable. You push through the heavy, studded oak door, leaving the cacophony of the marketplace behind. A sudden, almost unnatural quiet descends, punctuated only by the distant murmur of voices. The air inside is cooler, stagnant, with a faint, sweet smell of lavender or dried rose petals trying to mask something else, something cloying and unsettling beneath. Your boots no longer squelch in mud but echo softly on cold, polished marble tiles that gleam faintly in the dim light filtering from high, arched windows. You've stepped into the antechamber of a prosperous merchant's home, a testament to the city's burgeoning wealth. Your eyes adjust to the muted light, taking in the rich tapestries that hang heavy on the walls, depicting hunting scenes and mythical beasts. Their colors are deep, jewel-toned, a stark contrast to the drab browns and grays outside. You run a hand over the cool, smooth stone of a carved balustrade, its intricate details speaking of hours of skilled labor. Every surface here seems designed to impress, to project an image of enduring stability and power. But something feels off. The grand space, intended to convey opulence, feels more like a gilded cage. You notice how the heavy draperies are drawn, blocking out much of the vibrant world beyond. There's a subtle tension in the air, a quiet anxiety that underlies the visible grandeur. You see servants moving with a hushed efficiency, their eyes darting, never quite meeting yours. A sudden, dry cough from a dark corner makes you instinctively flinch, and you see others subtly shift their weight, their gazes briefly flickering towards the sound before quickly returning to their tasks. As you move deeper into the palazzo, past a fountain whose gentle trickle of water is the only consistent sound, you observe the family members. They are dressed in opulent velvets and silks, their fingers adorned with heavy rings. They laugh, they gesture, but their smiles don't quite reach their eyes. You catch a fleeting glimpse of a small, intricately carved wooden bird held by a young woman, its surface worn smooth from countless touches, perhaps a comfort object or a memento of someone lost. The air, despite the sweet scents, seems to hold the faint metallic tang of fear, a phantom odor you've come to recognize. You notice a small sachet of pungent herbs tucked discreetly into a man's belt, a silent ward against an unseen enemy. You feel the weight of unspoken anxieties pressing down, even within these high walls. This isn't just a home, it's a fortress, built to protect not only wealth, but also life, against a shadow that no amount of gold or marble can truly keep out. The opulence feels less like a celebration and more like a desperate assertion, a defiant flicker of light against the encroaching darkness. Even amidst such carefully curated splendor, you realize that true comfort remains elusive when a pervasive, invisible threat still lingers, a silent reminder that no wall, however high or gilded, can entirely separate you from the fragility of life. You feel the surprising chill of the parchment against your fingertips, a distinct, almost electric coldness that penetrates the thin skin. The air around you, in this cramped, dust-laden chamber tucked away behind a forgotten tapestry, carries the faint, dry scent of ancient paper, sun-baked leather, and a whisper of something earthy, like pressed leaves from centuries ago. A single, flickering tallow candle struggles against the gloom, its weak flame casting dancing shadows that seem to breathe life into the towering stacks of neglected scrolls and bound volumes. You are completely alone here, a clandestine quiet broken only by the nervous rhythm of your own breath. Your fingers tremble slightly as you carefully slide the hefty codex from its niche. It groans softly, a deep, resonant sigh of protest from wood and vellum that haven't seen the light of day or human touch in untold decades. The binding, a dark, worn leather, is smooth beneath your thumb, scarred with age and some forgotten journey. Runes and faded symbols, half obscured by time, adorn its cover, hints of a past where knowledge was protected, or perhaps hidden. The sheer weight of it, settling into your arms, feels like holding a piece of solid history, a stone tablet of forgotten thoughts. With a cautious breath, you unlatch the brass clasps. They click with surprising sharpness in the dense silence, and open the heavy cover. The pages, brittle and yellowed, whisper like dry leaves as they separate, releasing a puff of fine dust that momentarily catches the candle's weak glow. The ink, still remarkably vibrant, flows across the vellum in elegant, unfamiliar Greek characters. You trace a line of text, feeling the slight, raised texture of the ink beneath your finger, a physical connection to the long-dead hand that penned these words. It's a passage from a philosopher, a pre-Christian mind, contemplating the nature of the cosmos, of human potential, of ethical living without divine intervention. It speaks of a world understood through observation, through reason, not just through faith. A profound shift stirs within you. This isn't heresy, not in the direct sense, but it is certainly dangerous. It's a quiet challenge to the established order of thought, a radical assertion of human capacity. You glance over your shoulder, your heart quickening, a nervous habit born from years of caution. No one is near, yet the very atmosphere of this hidden space feels charged with the presence of past scholars who risked everything for these ideas. You absorb the words, allowing them to seep into your understanding, feeling a profound broadening of your internal landscape. This isn't just a book. It's a window into a forgotten way of seeing the universe. A universe where humanity held a different, more central, and perhaps more terrifying role. The coolness of the parchment against your skin is a constant, tangible reminder of this unearthed connection to ancient voices. You spend what feels like hours, lost in the intricate arguments, the bold truths, the complex questions that these pages pose. You feel the weight of centuries, not as a burden, but as an awakening, a slow uncoiling of intellectual hunger you hadn't known you possessed. You realize that even in the deepest shadows, ideas can lie dormant for ages, only to reawaken with a single touch, capable of igniting a fire that reshapes entire worlds, one mind at a time. You're sitting hunched over the ancient text, your muscles stiff, the candle guttering low, but you can't tear your eyes away. It's no longer just the chill of the parchment you feel, but a prickling sensation on your skin, a lightness in your head, as if the very foundations of your understanding are being subtly, irrevocably shifted. The ideas contained within these brittle pages aren't just words. They are an alternate universe, unfolding before your mind's eye. You read a passage that describes the human mind as a vast, powerful instrument, capable of understanding the world through its own observation and reasoning, rather than merely through revelation. It speaks of a universe not centered around humanity, but a grand, complex mechanism whose secrets can be unlocked by patient inquiry. The world you've always known, a static, divinely ordered place, begins to wobble, to lose its rigid edges. You feel a strange kind of intellectual vertigo, a dizzying sense of possibility, mixed with a profound unease. You pause, looking up from the page, though your gaze is still distant, focused inward. The shadows in the dusty chamber seem deeper, more profound, as if they too are concealing secrets. The air, once merely still, now feels pregnant with unasked questions. You try to reconcile what you're reading with what you've been taught your entire life, the comfortable, familiar narratives of sin and salvation, of a fixed hierarchy of being. This new perspective doesn't negate those narratives entirely, but it certainly offers a powerful, compelling alternative, a different lens through which to view existence. A surge of excitement, sharp and exhilarating, runs through you. It's like discovering a secret door in a familiar house, a door opening onto an endlessly winding corridor. You can almost feel your own brain stretching, expanding, accommodating these foreign, yet strangely compelling concepts. This isn't just about ancient history, it's about the present, about your present. It makes you question everything: the purpose of art, the nature of governance, the very essence of human worth. If humanity is capable of such profound understanding through its own efforts, what then is its true potential and its true responsibility? You close your eyes for a moment, the faint scent of old paper and dust filling your nostrils, and picture the bustling streets outside. The common folk, toiling away, living lives bound by custom and unquestioning faith. How would these ideas, this intellectual freedom, reverberate through their world? The thought is both thrilling and terrifying. You imagine the whispers, the debates, the arguments, the possible upheavals. This book isn't just a collection of thoughts. It's a seed, capable of growing into a forest of entirely new ways of thinking, living, and challenging. You realize that embracing a new way of seeing the world isn't merely about gaining knowledge. It's about fundamentally altering your relationship to reality, leaving you both liberated and profoundly unsettled by the boundless possibilities. A sharp, acrid smell burns your nostrils the moment you step into the cavernous, damp workshop. It's a metallic tang, mingling with the earthy scent of drying plaster and the faint sweetness of oil. Your throat tightens instinctively, and you feel a tickle deep in your lungs, an involuntary cough trying to escape. The air is thick with fine dust, illuminated by shafts of weak morning light, slicing through grime-streaked windows high above. It's colder than outside, a bone-chilling dampness that clings to your clothes. You look around and see why. This isn't a clean, pristine studio. It's a factory of creation, a place of hard, physical labor. You watch as an apprentice, his face, smudged with white powder, laboriously grinds a brilliant blue stone in a mortar, his movements rhythmic and strained. The dust that rises from his work is the source of the sharp scent, a potent mineral that you realize must be crushed lapis lazuli. The very air around him shimmers with the microscopic particles, and you notice how he frequently stops, hunches over, and coughs, a dry, rasping sound that reverberates in the vast space. Further in, another artisan leans over a large wooden panel, meticulously applying a thin layer of gold leaf. His breath is held, his hands steady, as if any tremor could shatter the illusion of perfection. You see the faint shimmer of sweat on his brow, the intense focus in his eyes. The gold is blindingly bright against the muted wood, a stark contrast to the grimy surroundings and the effort required to produce such beauty. You touch a nearby pile of raw ochre, its texture rough and gritty against your palm, a reminder of the earth from which all this vibrancy is born. You move closer to a large fresco in progress, its massive surface already teeming with figures. The master painter, a man with tired eyes and hands stained with every color imaginable, works with furious concentration. He's perched precariously on scaffolding, his head tilted back, brushstrokes swift and precise. You watch as he mixes a new batch of pigment on his palette, his movements fluid, almost ritualistic. The vibrant reds, the deep greens, the glorious blues, Each color holds a history of arduous extraction, dangerous refinement, and immense cost. You feel the constant tension in the workshop, the pressure of deadlines, the cost of materials, the sheer physical toll demanded by these ambitious artistic endeavors. You notice the master pauses, clutches his chest for a moment, and takes a deep, ragged breath before returning to his work, as if fighting an invisible battle within his own body. The beauty being created here comes with a profound price, not just in coin, but in health, in human endurance, in the very air these artists breathe. The glow of the finished work seems to mock the struggles that brought it into being. You realize that true artistic genius often demands not just talent and vision, but a hidden, dangerous sacrifice, a burning of one's own life force to bring vibrant, lasting beauty into the world. The heavy oak door to the workshop creaks open, letting in a gust of cold air that stirs the dust motes dancing in the light. A sudden, palpable tension snaps through the space. The rhythmic grinding of pigment ceases, brushes pause mid-stroke, and even the master painter high on his scaffolding visibly tenses. You feel a prickle of unease yourself as the source of this disruption enters, a portly, richly dressed man, his velvet cloak sweeping the floor, his face severe. This is the patron, the source of the gold and the architect of their current agony. His eyes, sharp and critical, sweep across the half-finished fresco, then to the master. He doesn't speak, but his pursed lips and the impatient tapping of his foot on the stone floor communicate volumes. You can almost feel the master's breath catch in his chest, his shoulders hunching slightly, an almost imperceptible concession to the unspoken demand. The air in the workshop, already thick with pigment dust, now feels charged with the patron's silent judgment, heavy and oppressive. You watch as the patron gestures abruptly with his gloved hand towards a section of the painting. He points to a particular figure, then shakes his head, a clear expression of disapproval. The master descends slowly from the scaffolding, his movements stiff, his face unreadable. You can see the weariness etched around his eyes, the subtle tremor in his hand as he wipes a stray smudge of paint from his smock. He stands before the patron, bowing his head slightly, a gesture of respect that feels more like submission. The patron leans in, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, though you can't make out the words. His tone, however, is clear, demanding, unyielding. He jabs a finger towards the fresco again, then towards a small, almost finished canvas propped against a wall, as if to imply a lack of speed, a wasted effort. You see the master's jaw tighten, a flicker of pride and frustration battling in his eyes. He slowly nods, a silent agreement to rectify whatever perceived flaw the patron has identified, even if it means painstakingly redoing hours of work. The patron turns to leave, his presence evaporating as quickly as it arrived, leaving behind a lingering chill. The apprentices immediately resume their work, but with a renewed, frantic energy. The rhythmic grinding of the lapis lazuli starts again, now faster, more desperate. The master himself, without a word, climbs back onto his scaffolding, his shoulders slumped, but his hand already reaching for a fresh brush. You see him eye the disputed section, his gaze heavy with the weight of the patron's displeasure, and the agonizing knowledge that he must now sacrifice more of his precious time, his dwindling health, to meet an external whim. You realize that even the most sublime acts of creation are often not born of pure inspiration, but are forged under immense pressure, a fragile balance between artistic vision and the relentless demands of those who hold the purse strings. The first thing that assaults your senses isn't a taste, but a dizzying array of smells. Roasted boar, sweet wine, exotic spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, and a heavy undertone of expensive perfumes. You're enveloped in a humid warmth, the air thick with the breath of 100 revelers, the flickering light of countless candles and oil lamps making every shadow dance on the frescoed walls. This is a Borgia banquet, and you find yourself seated at a long, polished table, surrounded by opulent display and the low hum of dangerous conversation. A servant, clad in rich livery, offers you a delicate silver goblet. The wine, a deep ruby red, shimmers enticingly. You take a cautious sip, and it's surprisingly sweet, almost cloying, with a rich fruitiness that lingers on your tongue. Then, just as the sweetness begins to fade, a strange, metallic bitterness blooms at the back of your throat. It's subtle at first, almost imperceptible, a faint, burning sensation that prickles and then spreads, like a tiny, cold spark igniting deep inside. Your mouth feels suddenly dry, and your heart gives an uncomfortable lurch. You try to remain composed, your eyes subtly scanning the faces around the table. Laughter rings out, sharp and brittle. Jewels glitter on fingers. Silks rustle as guests lean in to whisper secrets. Everyone is smiling, yet a predatory edge seems to underlie the conviviality. You watch a nobleman across from you, his face flushed with wine, take a hearty gulp from his own goblet, his eyes meeting yours briefly before he looks away, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Did he notice anything? Or is it just your imagination, a paranoia born from the notorious reputation of your hosts? You feel a growing heat in your stomach, a distinct discomfort, not from the rich food, but from this new, foreign sensation. The sweetness of the wine now seems utterly deceptive, a veil over something sinister. You try another small sip, forcing yourself to confirm the sensation. Yes, it's there, unmistakable this time. A faint tingling on your lips, followed by that sharp, metallic edge, then the slow burn. Your palms are suddenly damp, and you feel a tremor run through your hand, making you grip the goblet tighter. The joyous music from the lute player in the corner suddenly sounds discordant. The vibrant colors of the tapestries seem garish, overwhelming. You push a perfectly roasted quail leg around your plate with your fork, the aroma now turning your stomach. Every sense is heightened, distorted by this lurking suspicion. You glance at the opulent chandeliers, their light reflecting off daggers and rings, and wonder if anyone else at this table is feeling this chilling awareness. The feast, once a display of power and pleasure, has transformed into a theater of subtle terror. You realize that even in the midst of unparalleled luxury and festivity, the most dangerous threats can be silent, hidden beneath a mask of sweetness, testing your every perception and instinct for survival. You press your ear instinctively against the cool, ancient stone of the corridor wall, a chill seeping through your clothing. The air here, in this shadowed recess of a palatial residence, is thick with the cloying sweetness of stale incense, strangely mixed with the sharp scent of expensive foreign wine. From behind the heavy brocaded door just ahead, you hear the low, hushed murmur of several voices, a rhythmic cadence that suggests not prayer, but negotiation, a subtle dance of power. You shift your weight, peering through a narrow, decorative grating. The chamber beyond is lavish, draped in crimson velvet with a large, intricately carved crucifix dominating one wall. Yet your gaze is drawn not to the sacred symbol, but to the figures gathered around a massive oak table. Cardinals in their vibrant robes sit beside grim-faced secular lords in dark finery. Their faces, caught in the flickering light of numerous candles, are not serene or pious. Instead, you see a careful calculation in their eyes, a tension in their jawlines, the subtle clenching of hands adorned with heavy rings. One cardinal, his jowly face gleaming with sweat, leans forward, his voice dropping even lower. He gestures with a plump hand, adorned with a bishop's ring, towards a rolled parchment on the table. Another, younger, more ascetic-looking, nods slowly, his gaze fixed on the older man's lips, a flicker of something calculating in his otherwise placid expression. It's clear they are discussing matters of earthly dominion, not heavenly salvation. You catch snippets, fragments that speak of land grants, lucrative appointments in distant dioceses, alliances forged not through faith, but through coin and influence. You notice the quiet, almost imperceptible exchange of a small, heavy pouch beneath the table, its weight passing from a lord's hand to a cleric's. There's no outward sign of impropriety, no loud pronouncements, just the smooth, practiced choreography of those accustomed to wielding power in the shadows. The very air seems to hum with unspoken deals, with the quiet assurance that divine blessing can indeed be purchased, or at least redirected, for the right price. The rich tapestry depicting a scene of martyrdom on the wall feels almost ironic, a stark contrast to the comfortable, self-serving piety unfolding beneath it. Your stomach clenches with a cold, hollow feeling. This isn't the fierce, open battle for souls that preachers describe. This is a subtle, insidious erosion of faith, a slow, calculated transformation of the sacred into the purely political. You watch as a lord clinks his goblet with the cardinals, a silent toast to their shared unspoken victory, a triumph of worldly ambition over any semblance of spiritual purity. The faint smile on the cardinal's face is not one of contentment, but of shrewd satisfaction. You realize that power, in its pursuit and consolidation, can twist even the purest intentions, turning the very symbols of piety into mere instruments for human gain, leaving you with a profound sense of disillusionment about the true nature of authority. You feel it, a persistent, phantom itch that lives just beneath your rough, homespun woolen tunic. It's not a bite, not a rash, but the constant scratchy abrasion of the coarse fabric against your skin, a dull, pervasive irritation that has become as familiar as the rhythm of your own breathing. The wool, undyed and unsoftened, smells faintly of sheep and wood smoke, a scent that never truly leaves you. You've learned to ignore it, mostly, but sometimes, especially when you're still, it rises to the surface of your awareness, a tiny, insistent demand for attention. You're bent over, your back aching, pulling at stubborn weeds in a field that stretches endlessly under a vast, indifferent sky. The earth beneath your bare feet is cold and damp, the clods of soil clinging to your toes. Your hands are calloused, cracked, and streaked with dirt, each fingernail harboring a tiny bit of the land you labor upon. The sun, when it appears from behind the gray clouds, offers little warmth, merely highlighting the dull sheen of sweat on your brow. You pull up a particularly deep-rooted weed, feeling the strain in your shoulders, and as you straighten for a moment, the woolen fabric rubs against your neck, prompting an involuntary, almost imperceptible twitch of your head. Around you, others work in similar silence, their bodies hunched, their movements slow and practiced. You see a woman nearby, her headscarf slipping, as she reaches a hand under her own rough smock for a quick, furtive scratch at her side. Her eyes meet yours for a fleeting moment, a shared understanding passing between you without a single word. It's a silent acknowledgement of the collective, unyielding discomfort that defines so much of their existence. A child, no older than 7, is tasked with gathering stones, his small, thin fingers fumbling with the heavy rocks. He too pauses to shift his shoulders, adjusting the weight of his own scratchy tunic. The constant itch is a minor thing, really, in the grand scheme of things. There's the gnawing hunger that starts in your belly each afternoon, the biting cold of the coming winter that promises misery, the constant worry about the meager harvest and what it will mean for the lean months ahead. Yet, this small, persistent irritation is always there, a baseline hum of discomfort, a physical tether to the unadorned reality of your life. It's a feeling that binds you to everyone around you, a common thread in the tapestry of their demanding days. You exhale slowly, feeling the damp air fill your lungs and push the phantom itch from your conscious mind, letting it recede back into the background noise of existence. You realize that for many, life is a continuous lesson in endurance, not against grand, dramatic struggles, but against the relentless, quiet irritations that slowly, steadily wear down the spirit, demanding an almost superhuman capacity for simple persistence. The thin, reedy sound of a lute drifts on the biting wind, faint but unmistakable, carried from the distant town over the barren fields. It's a melody you rarely hear, complex and joyful, a stark contrast to the rough, mournful chants sung during harvest. You're huddled by a sputtering fire in your small, mud-walled hovel, the smoke stinging your eyes, but your gaze is fixed on the invisible horizon where that music originates. It speaks of celebrations, of warmth, of a world utterly removed from your own, a place where people have the leisure to create and listen to such frivolous beauty. A deep, bitter taste fills your mouth, not of food, but of something unspoken, something that settles heavy in your chest. You run a rough, calloused hand over your face, feeling the grit of dried soil beneath your fingernails. The warmth from the meager fire does little to dispel the persistent chill that seems to cling to your very bones, a cold that promises another harsh winter. Around you, the other villagers are equally quiet, their faces etched with the same weariness, the same silent acknowledgement of the world outside their unchanging existence. A mother hushes her fretful child. Her eyes, too, briefly turn towards the unseen town. Just yesterday you watched a procession of finely dressed riders pass on the main road, their horses bedecked with colorful plumes, their cloaks shimmering with rich fabrics. They moved quickly, their faces impassive, barely sparing a glance for the villagers who paused their work to watch them go. You saw the glint of metal on their saddles, the soft leather of their boots, details that spoke of a wealth so vast it was almost unimaginable. It's not just the things they possess, but the ease with which they move through the world, unburdened by the relentless demands of the soil, the constant ache in your joints. You feel a tight knot form in your stomach, a quiet, simmering anger that you dare not voice. It's the resentment of the unchanging, the overlooked, towards a world that is supposedly reborn, but offers no rebirth for you. Your daily rhythm remains tethered to the sun and the seasons, to the unyielding earth. The same hard labor, the same meager meals, the same cold nights. The whispers of new ideas, of grand art, of expanding trade, reach you only as faint echoes, proving only that others are prospering while your back breaks for the same pittance. You pick up a dull, heavy stone from beside the fire, turning it over and over in your palm, feeling its unchanging, unyielding density. It's a small, futile gesture, but it's a tangible anchor in a world that feels increasingly out of reach, a constant, physical reminder of your fixed place. The lute music fades, replaced by the familiar howl of the wind, and the world shrinks back to the confines of your cold, smoky hovel. But the bitter taste in your mouth remains. You realize that for those left behind, progress can feel less like a promise and more like a cruel, distant taunt, slowly hardening the heart with a quiet, persistent resentment against a future that seems to pass them by. A violent, rhythmic clang echoes through the cramped, low-ceilinged workshop, making your teeth vibrate and sending a jolt through the floor beneath your feet. It's a sound unlike anything you've ever heard, a deep, resonant, thudge clang that reverberates in your chest, instantly demanding your full attention. The air is thick with a new, sharp scent, metallic ink, oil, and the dry, earthy smell of fresh paper. You flinch slightly as the colossal wooden and iron contraption before you groans, shudders, and then falls silent for a brief, tense moment before beginning its noisy cycle anew. You push closer, elbowing past others who stand equally mesmerized, their faces illuminated by the dim, scattered light from tiny, grimy windows. This isn't a scribe's quiet chamber. It's a factory of revolutionary noise. You see two men, their shirts stained with ink, working with a synchronized, almost desperate efficiency. One rapidly locks tiny, gleaming metal letters into a frame, his fingers moving with incredible speed and precision. You notice the sweat beading on his brow, the concentration etched into his face, as he carefully arranges each character, building words, then lines, then entire pages. The sheer volume of individual pieces is staggering, an intricate metal mosaic of thought. The other man, powerfully built, works the main lever. With a grunt of effort, he pulls it down, activating a massive screw mechanism. The top platen descends with terrifying force, pressing a sheet of damp paper against the inked type. That's the asterisk thud. Then, with a creaking contour of gears and a final, sharp clang as the lever snaps back, the pressure is released. He carefully lifts the platen, and there it is, a pristine sheet of paper, covered with perfectly uniform, black letters. You lean in, captivated, and touch the fresh page. The ink is still slightly wet, cool beneath your fingertip. The words are crisp, clear, identical to the one printed before it, and the one that will be printed after. It's an act of mechanical magic, turning hours of a scribe's careful labor into mere minutes. The repetitive thud and clang, once jarring, now take on a compelling rhythm, a heartbeat of industrial progress. You see the stack of finished pages growing rapidly on a nearby table, an avalanche of identical texts, each one an exact copy, waiting to carry its message far and wide. A profound sense of awe, mixed with a hint of unease, settles over you. This isn't just about making books faster. It's about making ideas cheaper, more accessible, less controlled. You feel the potential for an explosion of knowledge, a proliferation of thought that no single authority could hope to contain. The raw, guttural noise of the machine is the sound of a new era being born, An era where the quiet authority of the handwritten word is challenged by the deafening roar of mass production. You realize that true revolutions often arrive not with grand pronouncements, but with the steady, insistent beat of a new invention, dismantling old structures piece by piece, one printed page at a time. A strange, restless hum vibrates through the air, not a sound you can pinpoint, but a collective tension, like static electricity before a storm. You're in a crowded public square, the usual boisterous cries of vendors slightly subdued, replaced by hushed conversations that ripple through the throngs. The scent of damp stone and cooking fires mixes with a new subtle aroma. Cheap, freshly printed paper, carried on the breeze from countless small pamphlets being passed hand to hand. It's a scent that now seems to cling to every corner of the city. You watch as a man, his face grim, quickly folds a small, flimsy pamphlet and tucks it deep into his tunic, glancing around nervously. Another, younger, stands on an overturned crate, not shouting news but quietly reading aloud from a similar sheet, his voice low but insistent. A small circle of listeners leans in, their expressions a mix of fear, fascination, and dawning comprehension. You feel a prickling sensation on your skin, a phantom itch of curiosity that urges you closer, even as a sense of caution holds you back. These aren't proclamations from the church or the city council. These are direct challenges, radical notions, now easily accessible. You manage to catch a glimpse of one such pamphlet being exchanged. The stark black letters on the coarse paper are clear, bold, strikingly uniform. You notice how swiftly it moves from one person to another, like a spark catching dry tinder. There's a palpable anxiety in the way people look at these pages, a guarded excitement, a fear of what they might unleash. It's not just information, it's an idea, spreading like a contagion, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers of knowledge. You see a priest, his face etched with concern, quickly ushering a few parishioners away from a group gathered around a reader, his gestures sharp, his brow furrowed with disapproval. The air feels charged with whispered questions. What do these words mean for us? For our faith? For the way things have always been? You feel the unsettling ground shifting beneath the surface of everyday life. A chilling thought creeps in. If everyone can read and interpret these ideas for themselves, if every common person can hold a challenge to authority in their own hand, what happens to the careful order of the world? The buzz around you intensifies, a low thrum of collective unease and awakening. You sense the delicate balance of power, once so firmly held, is now teetering on the edge, vulnerable to the silent, viral force of the printed word. You realize that a single idea, once unleashed and allowed to spread unhindered, carries an inherent, almost terrifying power, capable of fracturing established truths and sparking an uncontainable anxiety about the future. The heavy wool of your scholar's robe chafes against your neck, a familiar, almost constant constriction. It's not just the rough texture or the sheer weight of the fabric. It's the profound sense of expectation, of established order, woven into every thread that settles upon your shoulders. The air in this university hall is still and cool, carrying the faint, dry scent of beeswax from polished wood, old parchment from countless volumes, and the lingering, almost melancholy aroma of extinguished lamps from the previous night's long study. You clear your throat, feeling a distinct dryness, a scratchiness that seems to emanate from deeper within than simple thirst, a manifestation of unspoken fatigue. You stand at the lectern, the heavy wooden surface cool beneath your fingertips, before a small assembly of earnest young students. Their faces, a mixture of wide-eyed curiosity and the occasional flicker of youthful impatience, track your every movement. Their gazes, full of expectant trust, hang on your words. But these words, the carefully chosen phrases, the precise Latin and Greek citations, feel increasingly like hollow echoes of something once vital. You gesture with a hand, feeling the smooth, expensive silk lining of your sleeve slide subtly against your skin. A small, daily luxury that now feels less like comfort and more like another layer of this gilded cage. You are expounding on a classical text, one you've studied and taught for decades, dissecting its complex arguments with a practiced, almost rote ease. Yet, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor runs through your hand as you carefully point to a specific passage on the vellum scroll, a quiet, insistent rebellion of your body against the rigid routine of intellectual duty. A deep, quiet sigh threatens to escape your lips, almost imperceptible. This is no longer the joyous, clandestine pursuit of forbidden knowledge that once ignited your spirit in younger years. This is a performance, a solemn, unavoidable duty. You feel the immense, almost suffocating weight of countless dusty volumes lining the library walls, each one a formidable testament to centuries of accepted wisdom, each one a potential, silent barrier to genuine, unfettered, and truly original thought. The very ideas you now present, once considered daring and revolutionary, feel polished, smoothed by repetition, tamed by academic analysis, drained of their raw, transformative power. Your gaze drifts for a moment to a senior colleague, seated among the more advanced students, his face impassive, his own robes impeccably draped, and you distinctly sense the watchful, unblinking eye of tradition, ever vigilant, ensuring no truly radical spark dares to fly too far from the carefully prescribed path. Your mind, despite itself, wanders to those flimsy, cheaply printed pamphlets you've heard whispers of, filled with raw, unrefined, and often dangerously direct ideas, circulating in the bustling, unmanaged underbelly of the city. There's a genuine longing there, a flicker of intellectual hunger for something less structured, less safe, something that hasn't been filtered through layers of academic convention. But the sheer weight of your established position, the very fabric of your esteemed robes, metaphorically and literally pulls you back, a silent, powerful reminder of the invisible boundaries you must not cross, the carefully constructed respectability you are compelled to uphold, the intellectual comfort you are expected to maintain. You realize that even the most noble pursuit of knowledge, when constrained by the heavy mantle of expectation and the rigid frameworks of tradition, can become its own kind of gilded prison, trapping the mind as surely as any physical wall or locked gate, leaving you with an unsettling sense of an unfulfilled intellectual destiny. A trickle of cold sweat spiders down your spine, despite the heavy wool of your robe, despite the warmth radiating from the large fireplace. The air in this silent wood-paneled chamber is thick, not with dust, but with an unspoken accusation, a palpable weight pressing down on your chest. You stand before a long, polished table, its surface gleaming faintly, reflecting the flickering light of numerous candles. 3 men, their faces severe and unyielding, sit opposite you, their gazes like cold steel, dissecting your very soul. Your tongue feels thick, your mouth dry as dust. You clear your throat, a small, involuntary sound that seems deafening in the profound quiet. One of the men, an inquisitor whose eyes hold an almost unsettling calm, gestures with a parchment. His finger, long and thin, points to a specific passage, a line of scholarly inquiry from your own published work. You feel a knot tighten in your stomach, a chill that has nothing to do with the room's temperature. This is no longer a gentle academic debate. It is a meticulous dismantling of your intellectual life, under the shadow of something far more sinister than mere disagreement. You feel their scrutiny like a physical touch, probing for any weakness, any hint of deviation from prescribed thought. Another man, a stern-faced bishop, shifts slightly in his heavy velvet chair, his silence more unnerving than any shouted accusation. His lips are a thin, hard line. You watch his hand move, almost imperceptibly, to rest on a large, leather-bound volume, not a classical text, but a tome of church law, its authority absolute. The message is clear, unmistakable. This isn't about intellectual freedom. It's about conformity. About the mortal danger of a mind that dares to wander too far from the sanctioned path. You choose your words with agonizing care, each syllable a calculated risk. You defend your reasoning, citing ancient sources and logical deductions, yet you instinctively soften the edges of your arguments, knowing that pure, unvarnished truth can be a fatal weapon in this chamber. Your heart pounds a slow, heavy rhythm against your ribs. You see a flicker of something in the Inquisitor's eyes, not understanding, but a calculating assessment of your composure, your resolve. He poses another question, a subtle trap, designed to expose the very core of your intellectual independence. You feel the pressure mounting, the silent weight of centuries of dogma arrayed against your single, questioning mind. The fear isn't just for your reputation, but for your very existence. You recall whispers of others who, in similar circumstances, found their books burned, their lives extinguished, their intellectual legacy erased, all for the crime of thinking too deeply, too differently. The burning scent of the candles, once innocuous, now feels like a precursor, a faint promise of the pyre. You realize that while ideas can uplift and inspire, they can also become heavy chains, and in a world where belief is mandated, the very act of independent thought can transform into a terrifying, life-threatening gamble. A deafening, guttural roar rips through the cold morning air, vibrating through the very stone beneath your feet. It's not thunder, not the clash of swords, but something far more primal. A sound that makes your gut clench and your ears ring. A moment later, a sickening trump shakes the massive castle walls, sending a shower of dust and small stones raining down from the battlements above. The acrid smell of burnt sulfur and gunpowder, sharp and metallic, instantly fills your nostrils, making you cough. You're huddled on the ramparts, your hand pressed against the cold, rough stone for support. Below, across the muddy expanse of the siege lines, you see it. A monstrous black tube, belching white smoke. The cannon. Its appearance on the battlefield is a relatively new terror, and its impact is immediate and devastating. You watch in horror as a section of the mighty curtain wall, once thought impregnable, simply crumbles inward, releasing a plume of shattered rock and dust. The roar of the explosion is still echoing when the frantic shouts of the defending soldiers erupt, a desperate, high-pitched cry that speaks of terror and futility. The ground trembles again, a rhythmic, sickening pulse. Another flash, another deafening report, and then another segment of the wall groans under the impact. You feel the grit of pulverized stone settle on your face, taste the metallic tang of fear in your mouth. Around you, the castle defenders, hardened veterans and raw recruits alike, exchange panicked glances. Their faces, pale and drawn, show a dawning realization. The old ways of warfare are obsolete. The stone that has protected them for centuries is now fragile, vulnerable. The clatter of falling masonry, the desperate cries for healers, and the distant, mocking cheers of the besiegers blend into a terrifying symphony of destruction. You watch as a section of the wall crumbles further, leaving a gaping, ragged maw where solid stone once stood. Through it, you can glimpse the enemy standards, proudly snapping in the wind. A chilling vision of encroaching doom. The crossbowmen on the remaining sections of the wall fire back, their bolts whistling impotently into the distance. A small, futile reply against the overwhelming power of this new weapon. Their faces are grim, their gestures heavy with despair. There's no longer the satisfying thud of an arrow finding its mark against a shielded foe, only the impersonal, overwhelming force of the cannonball. The cold wind whips your cloak around you, but the chill you feel is deeper, colder than any weather. It's the chill of knowing that an entire era is collapsing, stone by agonizing stone, under the relentless, thundering blows of progress. The very ground beneath your feet, once a symbol of unshakable defense, now feels like a trembling, unstable platform for an uncertain future. You realize that true change often arrives not with a whisper, but with a roar, tearing down the very foundations of what was once considered immutable, and leaving you to grapple with the terrifying implications of a suddenly vulnerable world. A sharp, metallic tang, like stale blood and wet iron, fills your nostrils, clinging to the coarse tunics of the men around you. You're standing amidst a company of mercenaries, a ragged band assembled from every corner of Europe. Their temporary camp, a raw, ugly scar on the muddy landscape. The low, guttural rumble of their conversations mixes with the clink of poorly maintained armor and the rhythmic asterisk SHNNK asterisk of a blade being honed on a rough stone. This isn't the gleaming spectacle of a knight's retinue. It's a brutal, pragmatic business, utterly unromantic. Your eyes sweep across their faces, each one a map of hard, weathered lines, etched with scars both fresh and old. They are men who have seen too much, felt too little. There's a profound detachment in their gazes, a cold pragmatism that chills you more deeply than the biting autumn breeze. You watch as one man, his face half hidden by a dented functional helmet, meticulously checks the balance of his heavy axe. He spins it once, effortlessly, a practiced motion born of countless skirmishes, not jousting tournaments. His movements are efficient, devoid of any flourish or pretense of honor. You notice the empty leather pouch tied to his belt, a silent, undeniable testament to his sole motivation. Coin, not creed or lordly fealty. You feel a rough hand brush past you, not hostile, but simply indifferent, as a larger mercenary pushes through the knot of bodies. He catches your eye for a moment, his gaze unreadable, assessing your presence, before moving on. There's no challenge in his look, no camaraderie, just a fleeting acknowledgement of another body in the camp. His boots are caked with thick, persistent mud, his chainmail rusty in places, a far cry from the shining armor of ballad and legend. You perceive the underlying tension in their group, not loyalty, but a shared, wary understanding of their temporary purpose, bound only by their pay and their collective drive for survival. The contrast with the tales of chivalry, of valor and noble quests that filled the songs of your childhood is stark, almost painful in its blunt reality. Here there's no talk of glory, no fervent prayers for divine favor, no brightly emblazoned banners proclaiming noble causes. Only discussions of routes, of tactical advantages, of payment schedules, and the sheer logistics of killing and surviving. A young man, barely more than a boy, awkwardly tries to hoist a heavy pike, his face grimacing with effort. He looks at an older, more seasoned mercenary, not with admiration or a plea for inspiration, but with a desperate, unspoken request for basic guidance. A quiet anxiety about his mere survival, not his potential glory. The cold, hard ground beneath your feet feels unforgiving, a mirror to the brutal, unadorned reality unfolding around you. The ideals of honor and courage, once the bedrock of warfare and the subject of epic poems, seem to have dissolved, replaced by a cold, calculating efficiency that understands only victory and survival, at any cost, draining the battlefield of its ancient, romanticized meaning. You realize that when the stakes are truly mortal, and loyalty is bought rather than sworn by oath, the grand narratives of heroism often crumble, leaving behind a stark, unsettling landscape where only the most pragmatic and unfeeling individuals ultimately prevail. The salt is everywhere. It coats your lips, crusts on your rough woolen clothes, and tinges every mouthful of stale biscuit you force down. But it's the taste in your mouth, a perpetual metallic sweetness mixed with a deep, unsettling soreness, that truly defines this journey. Your gums ache, swollen and tender, bleeding slightly with every desperate chew. The air around you, in the cramped, pitching belly of the caravel, is a sickening cocktail of damp wood, unwashed bodies, and the relentless raw stench of a bilge that has seen too many weeks at sea. You feel the constant, uneasy roll of the ship beneath your bare feet, a monotonous lull that offers no comfort. You reach up, fingers exploring your aching jaw, and feel a loose tooth, barely clinging to its roots. It's a familiar, chilling sensation, one you've seen on the faces of too many of your shipmates. Your gaze sweeps over the men huddled around you, their faces gaunt, eyes sunken, skin a sallow, sickly yellow. They move with a profound weariness, their movements slow and deliberate, as if each step cost them immense effort. You see the faint, dark bruises blossoming on a man's shins, the telltale sign that this insidious sickness is steadily consuming them, limb by painful limb. A quiet, rasping cough echoes from the shadows, a constant reminder of the fragility of life on this endless, unforgiving ocean. Another sailor, his face pale and drawn, tries to gnaw on a piece of dried meat, wincing visibly as he attempts to chew. He glances at you, his eyes holding a resigned despair that needs no words. You feel the constant hunger in your stomach, a hollow ache that no amount of salty biscuit can truly satiate. The longing for fresh green things, for anything that hasn't been preserved in salt or dried to leather, is a tormenting phantom limb, an insistent craving that only grows with each passing monotonous day. The vast indifferent expanse of the ocean outside the small porthole-like opening feels less like a promise of new worlds, and more like an endless, watery grave, slowly but surely claiming its victims. The grand maps and the bold pronouncements of distant riches, the allure of discovery that once fueled this desperate voyage, now feel like a cruel, distant joke. What matters now is the next sunrise, the next ration, the stubborn persistence of your own failing body. You feel the cold spray of seawater splash onto your face as the ship pitches, its momentary sting a sharp contrast to the dull, internal pain that has become your constant companion. The sheer, relentless agony of this slow decay, the subtle yet devastating toll of the sea, grinds down hope with the same monotony as the waves against the hull. You realize that the pursuit of glory and the expansion of human knowledge often demand a far more intimate, brutal, and physical sacrifice than any grand tale of heroism could ever convey, slowly eroding the very vitality of those who dare to seek it. The first breath of air that hits you isn't the familiar salty sting of the open sea, but a blast of something entirely alien. It's a heady, almost suffocating mix of rich, fertile earth, unfamiliar blossoms, and the pungent smoke of strange wood fires. Your feet, still accustomed to the constant roll of the deck, now press against solid, warm sand, an almost overwhelming sensation after weeks of only swaying wood. The air is humid, clinging to your skin, a stark contrast to the crisp winds of your homeland. You squint against a sun that feels stronger, more direct than any you've ever known, revealing colors so vibrant they almost hurt your eyes. The foliage is a riot of impossibly deep greens, splashed with electric blues and fiery oranges from flowers you've never seen before. A strange, chattering sound, like a chorus of unfamiliar birds, echoes from the dense jungle just beyond the beach, a constant, foreign melody. You feel a profound, disorienting shock, a jolt to your very core. This isn't just a new place on a map. It's a new world, one that your most vivid imaginings could never have conjured. Your eyes, still raw from weeks of sea glare, struggle to comprehend. The men around you, your surviving shipmates, stand equally stunned, their gaunt faces slack with disbelief. One reaches out a trembling hand, as if to touch the air, to verify this impossible reality. You see the raw wonder, but also a deep-seated fear, in their sunken eyes. What does this place mean for everything they thought they knew? The edge of the known world has not merely been crossed, it has been annihilated. Then you see them. Figures emerge from the edge of the jungle, silent, their skin the color of rich earth, adorned with feathers and intricate body paint. Their gaze, calm and direct, meets yours. There's no hostility, but an utter, profound lack of recognition, a silent question in their eyes that mirrors your own. They speak in a language of clicks and guttural sounds, entirely incomprehensible. You feel a sudden, dizzying sense of your own smallness, your own ignorance. Everything you've believed, every lesson, every map, every story, seems utterly insufficient in the face of this undeniable, astonishing otherness. The ground feels solid, yes, but also alien, disconnected from the earth of your childhood. The smells, the sounds, the very light itself challenge every ingrained perception. This isn't just about discovery, it's about existential reorientation. You've crossed an ocean, only to discover that the world is far vaster, far stranger, and far more complex than any scholar or priest ever dared to imagine. The promises of gold and glory now feel secondary, almost trivial, compared to the overwhelming, almost terrifying truth of this unimagined existence. You realize that sometimes true discovery isn't just about finding new lands, but about having the very fabric of your reality irrevocably torn apart. leaving you utterly unmoored in a universe far grander and more mysterious than you could have ever conceived. A sharp, resonant clink cuts through the low murmur of the busy banking house, a sound that vibrates through the very air, clear and undeniable. It's the sound of gold, pure and heavy, being dropped onto a polished wooden counter. The air around you in this bustling candlelit chamber carries the distinct, dry scent of parchment, the metallic tang of ink, and a faint, almost imperceptible whisper of old leather and wealth. Your hands are clasped tightly behind your back, your breath held, as you stand among a small group of anxious petitioners, each awaiting their turn. You watch, mesmerized, as the stern-faced banker, a man whose dark, expensive robes seem to absorb all light, pushes a small pile of gleaming gold florins across the counter. The coins slide with an almost arrogant ease, their weight undeniable. They settle with another soft clink as they reach the outstretched hand of a young merchant, whose face, initially etched with worry, now softens with a barely contained relief. You see the light reflect off the intricate design of the coins, each one a testament to quantifiable value, to power translated into tangible, portable form. Your own palms feel damp, a nervous tremor starting deep in your stomach. You feel the weight of your own small, carefully folded petition clutched in your hand, a request for a loan, for the capital to launch your own venture. The vast, ornate ledgers, bound in heavy leather, lie open on the banker's desk, their pages covered in meticulously neat columns of figures, a silent, unyielding record of every transaction, every debt, every profit. These are not merely numbers. They are the arteries of this new world, pulsing with the lifeblood of commerce and ambition. You listen as the banker, his voice a low, steady drone, dictates terms to another client, his words precise, devoid of emotion. He speaks of interest, of collateral, of risks and returns. There's no room for sentiment here, no appeal to pity or ancient allegiances. Only cold, hard logic, a ruthless calculus of gain and loss. You see the client, a man who clearly understands the rules, nod in grim acceptance, his eyes already looking past the counter, envisioning the ships or goods his borrowed gold will acquire. The raw power in this room is palpable, concentrated not in swords or titles, but in the sheer accumulation and strategic deployment of wealth. It's a quiet, insidious power, reshaping cities, launching voyages, funding art, even influencing wars. The cold clink of the florin is the new currency of influence, cutting through the old hierarchies, demanding its own singular respect. You feel a profound, almost dizzying sense of this shift, a realization that the very nature of power is being redefined, minted anew, one golden coin at a time. You realize that in a world increasingly driven by ambition and enterprise, the true measure of a man's worth and the path to real influence is no longer solely determined by birthright or divine grace, but by the cold, calculating weight of what he possesses. A faint, bitter taste of dried wine and something more acrid, like fear, lingers in the air around you. You're kneeling in the cool, hushed sanctity of a dimly lit private chapel, the rich scent of frankincense cloying, almost suffocating. Before you, a magnificent altar gleams with gold leaf and flickering candlelight, a stark contrast to the shadowy corners where doubt and anxiety seem to gather. A priest, his face solemn, intones a Latin prayer, his voice a low, rhythmic drone that usually brings comfort, but tonight, it only amplifies the turmoil in your mind. You feel the hard, cold stone of the kneeling bench pressing into your knees, a familiar discomfort that typically grounds you. But tonight, it offers no solace. Your hands, clasped together, tremble slightly. You've spent your life accumulating wealth, shrewdly navigating the complex world of finance, lending money at interest, and turning a profit. Every successful transaction, every clink of a florin, has brought you worldly power and influence, allowed you to commission great artworks, to build a grand palazzo, to secure your family's future. Yet, these successes now feel hollow, tainted. The priest's words, though ancient, resonate with a new chilling clarity. Climium seis is a sin. The act of lending money for profit, the very foundation of your fortune, is condemned, a path to eternal damnation. You look up at the frescoed ceiling, depicting saints ascending to heaven, their faces beatific, and then your gaze falls to a terrifying depiction of hell, with sinners engulfed in flames, their faces contorted in agony. A cold dread washes over you, deeper than any chill from the stone floor. Your earthly triumphs, your carefully built legacy, now feel like weights, dragging your soul downwards. You try to pray, to seek absolution, but the words catch in your throat. How can you repent for a life's work that has shaped this burgeoning world, that has financed its art, its trade, its very progress? You feel the internal conflict, a searing pain in your chest, tearing you between the undeniable realities of a new, mercantile age and the timeless, unyielding dictates of your faith. You glance around the empty chapel, imagining the eyes of your ancestors, pious and unquestioning, judging your choices from the shadows. A deep, desperate sigh escapes you. The air in the chapel feels heavy, thick, with the unresolvable tension between worldly success and spiritual salvation. You know that others, fellow merchants and bankers, wrestle with this same agonizing paradox, frantically commissioning more art for churches, building hospitals, endowing monasteries, all in a desperate attempt to buy back their souls, to reconcile the irreconcilable. Your cold, wealthy hands feel suddenly unclean, burdened not by florins, but by the weight of an uncertain eternity. You realize that true crisis often emerges not from external threats, but from an internal struggle, when the demands of a changing world clash violently with the deeply ingrained moral compass of one's own soul, leaving you trapped in an agonizing, unresolvable paradox between power and piety. A sharp, insistent prick against your ribs makes you gasp. A tiny, involuntary intake of breath that catches in your throat. You feel the unyielding pressure of whalebone and stiffened linen, relentlessly cinching your waist, forcing your posture into an unnatural, almost painful elegance. The air in this lavish bedchamber, filled with the faint sweet scent of lavender and expensive perfumes, suddenly feels thin, inadequate for your restricted lungs. Your maid, her face impassive, pulls the laces tighter, her movements practiced and efficient. Yet each tug sends a fresh wave of discomfort through you. You stand before a tall, polished mirror, its surface reflecting a distorted image of your struggling form. The opulent gown, a heavy creation of brocade and velvet, lies waiting on a nearby chaise, its layers of fabric a beautiful, but formidable, prison. You watch your own face, pale and strained as you try to draw a deeper breath, feeling the corset constrict further, a constant, physical reminder of the role you must embody. This isn't just clothing. It's a ceremonial armor, designed to mold you into an ideal, to project an image of wealth, grace, and impeccable breeding. You feel the constant ache in your back, the pressure on your diaphragm, a dull, pervasive discomfort that has become as familiar as the beating of your own heart. It's a small, persistent agony, a quiet sacrifice demanded by your station. Your maid ties the final knot, pulling it excruciatingly tight, and you feel a distinct lightheadedness, a momentary blur at the edges of your vision. You take a careful, shallow breath, forcing a smile that doesn't quite reach your eyes. Rehearsing the composure expected of you, you glance at the elaborate coiffure already being prepared on a nearby table, delicate pearls and ribbons waiting to be woven into your hair. More layers, more expectations. Your hands, surprisingly delicate despite the underlying tension in your body, smooth down the folds of your shift, a small, almost unconscious gesture of seeking comfort. You hear the distant murmur of voices from the Palazzo's hall, a prelude to the day's social obligations, receptions, visits, endless polite conversations, each demanding the same rigid adherence to form and appearance. The prick of the corset, the squeeze around your middle, is a constant, tangible connection to the unspoken burdens of your life. It's the physical manifestation of societal expectations, of the gilded cage that is your privilege. You are a living work of art, a symbol of your family's status, and every inch of you, from your tightly bound waist to your carefully arranged hair, must conform to that demanding ideal. The silk and velvet are beautiful, yes, but they also bind you, restrict you, leaving little room for spontaneous breath, for genuine ease, for anything less than perfect controlled grace. You realize that even amidst the greatest luxury and apparent freedom, the expectations of society can become an invisible, yet profoundly restrictive force, molding the body and spirit into an image, often at the cost of authentic comfort and personal liberty. A cold, thin smile, practiced and perfect, stretches across your lips, making your jaw ache with the effort. It feels less like an expression and more like a carefully sculpted mask, held rigidly in place. The air in the grand reception hall, dense with the scent of lilies and warm spiced wine, feels heavy, almost suffocating, despite the cool drafts from the high, arched windows. You stand beside a towering fireplace, the warmth, a welcome counterpoint to the chill that lives deep within your bones, a constant reminder of unspoken agreements. You feel the slight, almost imperceptible tremor in your hand, as a heavy, gold-chased goblet is placed into it by a liveried servant. The wine, sweet and rich, tastes of distant lands, but it offers little warmth to your tightening stomach. Your eyes, trained to maintain an air of polite engagement, sweep across the room, taking in the intricate patterns of the tapestries, the gleaming jewels on other noblewomen, the hushed clusters of powerful men. Each face, each gesture, feels like a piece in a carefully choreographed dance, and you are playing your part, flawlessly. A man approaches, his silk robes rustling, his gaze assessing. He is older, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seem to pierce through your carefully constructed facade. He inclines his head, a formal greeting, and takes your hand, his touch surprisingly cool and firm against your own. He holds it for a fraction longer than strictly necessary, a silent gesture that speaks volumes, conveying not affection, but ownership, a subtle claiming. You feel a prickle on your skin, a phantom sensation, as if his touch is a branding iron. You maintain your painted smile, your composure unwavering, even as a wave of unbidden resentment washes over you. You watch as he turns to speak with your father, their heads close, their voices dropping to a low, conspiratorial murmur. You catch glimpses of their hands gesturing, subtle movements that denote agreement, the sealing of a pact. Your father casts a brief, reassuring glance your way, a look that seems to say, "Look, this is for the family. This is your duty. This is the way it must be." You nod almost imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement of the transaction, the exchange of status and alliances for your very person. The clink of a glass, the low rumble of a man's satisfied laugh punctuates the air. The heavy brocade of your gown feels like a cage, its intricate embroidery now a visual representation of the complex, unyielding threads of familial obligation and political ambition that bind you. You feel a profound sense of isolation, even amidst the throng of elegantly dressed bodies. You are a jewel, exquisitely cut, set in a strategic position, and your value lies not in your thoughts or desires, but in the alliance you secure. The weight of your own existence feels less like a life, and more like a carefully arranged negotiation, a silent, vital piece in a larger, relentless game. You realize that even the most celebrated beauty and the highest social standing can be an elaborate form of captivity, compelling you to perform a lifetime of smiles, while your true self remains a silent, hidden prisoner within the gilded walls of expectation. A clammy metallic chill immediately prickles your skin the moment you step into the anatomy theater. It's a cold that penetrates your clothes, sinking deep into your bones. But it's far more than just temperature. It carries a distinct, pervasive scent. A sharp, sickly sweet odor of decay, mingled with the earthy tang of damp stone, and the faint, acrid smell of vinegar used in futile attempts at preservation. Your stomach lurches, and you instinctively take a shallow breath, trying to filter the air, but the smell seems to cling to your very throat. You're standing on tiered wooden benches, part of a hushed, reverent crowd of scholars, artists, and medical students. All eyes are fixed on the center, where a single, stark white slab holds the subject of their morbid fascination. A human body, pale and still, lies exposed. The light filtering from a high oculus above casts a clinical, almost theatrical glow on the scene. The profound silence is broken only by the soft scraping of a scalpel against flesh and bone, a sound that makes you clench your jaw, your own muscles tightening in a sympathetic response. The professor, his face grave and intent, works with meticulous precision, his gloved hands navigating the intricate landscape of the human interior. He points with the tip of his blade, tracing a nerve, explaining the function of a muscle, the delicate architecture of a lung. You lean forward, despite your initial revulsion, a profound curiosity overriding your discomfort. You see the intricate web of veins, the surprising strength of the tendons, the unexpected softness of organs. This isn't just a lifeless form. It's a revelation, a complex, beautifully engineered machine laid bare for examination. You feel a strange, almost contradictory mix of awe and terror. The body, once seen as a mere vessel for the soul, a temporary and often despised prison, is now revealed as a marvel of natural design. You think of all the medieval texts you've read, based on ancient, often flawed theories, and then you see this undeniable, tangible proof of how little was truly understood. The cold, lifeless skin of the cadaver seems to mock centuries of unquestioned assumptions. laying bare the profound ignorance that once enveloped the very physical reality of human existence. A fellow student beside you, his face pale, quietly turns away, unable to bear the sight. But you cannot. Your gaze is fixed, drawing in every detail, every exposed truth. The clammy chill on your skin is a constant reminder of the thin veil between life and death, between accepted knowledge and revolutionary discovery. This is not just learning. It's a confrontation, a visceral challenge to old ways of thinking, a raw, undeniable argument for empirical observation. You realize that true enlightenment often begins in the most uncomfortable and forbidden spaces, demanding a willingness to look directly at the stark, unsettling realities of our own physical existence. Even when it challenges every deeply held belief, the chilling scent of decay and antiseptic has dulled, replaced by a lingering metallic tang that seems to cling to your tongue. You're still in the anatomy theater, the cadaver laid open, its internal landscape now intimately familiar. The initial shock has given way to a profound, almost philosophical unease. You watch as the professor gestures, his scalpel a precise extension of his will, meticulously separating layers of tissue, revealing the astonishing complexity of the human form. He meticulously explains the function of the heart, a pump, the brain, a network of nerves, the eye, a lens. Each organ, each system, is described with cool, dispassionate logic, as if dissecting a finely crafted clock. You feel a profound sense of intellectual vertigo, a dizzying recognition. There, before you, is the intricate, undeniable proof of a mechanical marvel. But where, in this meticulously catalogued collection of muscle, bone, and sinew, is the soul? Where is the spirit, the divine spark, the essence of what makes a human being truly human? You scan the exposed viscera, the pulsing vessels, the delicate membranes, searching for an answer, a tangible sign of that spiritual core, but find only more biology, more elegant mechanics. A cold, creeping fear starts to coil in your stomach. If the human body is merely a complex machine, then what separates you from a cleverly constructed automaton? What happens to faith, to salvation, to the very concept of free will, if every function can be explained by the elegant yet impersonal laws of nature? You recall the theological debates, the fervent sermons, the unquestioned belief in an eternal soul, and suddenly they feel impossibly distant, almost quaint, in the face of this stark, undeniable anatomical truth. You glance around at the other observers. Some nod in solemn understanding, their faces betraying no outward sign of inner turmoil. Others, however, wear a look of profound disquiet, their eyes wide, their hands clutching the railings of the benches. A young artist sketches furiously, attempting to capture every sinew, every muscle, but even his intense focus cannot fully mask the subtle tremor in his hand. You feel a shared unspoken dread ripple through the room, a collective wrestling with the implications of what they are witnessing. The professor, oblivious to the existential crisis unfolding in the minds of his audience, continues his lecture, his voice calm and steady, detailing the precise interplay of bones and ligaments. His words describe a body that is self-sufficient, a masterpiece of biological engineering that seems to need no external spiritual force to animate it. The cool, detached air of scientific inquiry, so liberating in one sense, now feels incredibly isolating in another, stripping away the comforting certainties of a divinely ordered universe. You realize that sometimes, true knowledge doesn't bring comfort or clarity, but instead opens a terrifying chasm between what you believe and what you can undeniably observe, forcing you to confront the unsettling possibility of a universe stripped of its most sacred mysteries. The cool, smooth press of a half-mask against your cheekbones instantly changes everything. It's a simple, elegant piece of white papier-mâché. Yet the moment it settles over your eyes and nose, cutting off a portion of your vision, the world around you explodes into sensory anarchy. The air, already thick with the sweet, cloying scent of cheap wine, roasted chestnuts, and something vaguely illicit, now feels charged, alive with a frantic energy. You're swept into the swirling current of a Venetian carnival, a tide of masked faces and disguised identities. Your ears are assaulted by a dizzying cacophony, the shrill blast of trumpets, the joyous strumming of lutes, bursts of drunken laughter, and the constant, indistinguishable murmur of hundreds of disguised voices. It's impossible to tell friend from foe, nobleman from peasant, or woman from man. You feel the constant press of bodies against you, brushing past, swaying with the rhythm of the music. A gloved hand lightly touches your arm, then quickly withdraws, leaving a faint, lingering tingle that sends a shiver down your spine. Underneath your cloak, your heart quickens its pace, caught in the intoxicating, slightly terrifying current of absolute anonymity. You try to focus your vision, but the limited scope of the mask makes everything a kaleidoscope of fragmented colors and blurred shapes. A flash of emerald green silk swirls past, followed by the stark white of a doctor's beak mask. You catch the glint of a jeweled pendant, the intricate pattern of embroidered velvet, the rough homespun of a simple cloak, all indistinguishable beneath the universal disguise. The taste of anonymity is liberating, potent, and utterly intoxicating. You can speak your mind, act with a freedom that would be unthinkable in broad daylight, all under the protective cloak of the mask. You watch as a figure in a black domino cloak whispers something into the ear of another, adorned with a grotesque, grinning demon mask. Their shoulders shake with silent laughter. There's a delicious, dangerous thrill in observing these clandestine exchanges, these hidden transgressions, knowing that you too are part of the secret. The familiar rules of society, the rigid hierarchies, the expected decorum, all are dissolved, drowned out by the riotous celebration of unbridled human nature. The city, usually so ordered and proper, becomes a stage for a grand collective masquerade, where identity is fluid, morality negotiable, and every encounter holds a hint of thrilling possibility. The cool, unyielding surface of the mask against your face is a constant reminder of this temporary, exhilarating escape. You are both present and absent, a participant and an invisible observer, granted a freedom that feels both exhilarating and profoundly unsettling. You realize that sometimes, true liberation isn't found in revealing your true self, but in the radical act of shedding all identity, embracing the chaos, and disappearing completely into the intoxicating anonymity of the crowd. The cool, slick surface of the mask is suddenly gone, peeling away from your face, leaving your skin feeling strangely exposed, tingling in the sharp morning air. It's an abrupt, almost jarring return to yourself. The wild cacophony of the carnival is replaced by a profound, echoing silence, broken only by the distant, mournful cry of a gull and the gentle lapping of water against stone. The air, once thick with sweet wine and illicit scents, now carries the damp, metallic smell of the canals, a chill that seeps into your bones, a harsh reality after the night's feverish warmth. You stand on the empty call, the cobblestones cold and unforgiving beneath your weary feet. Your head aches with a dull throb, a persistent reminder of the revelry. The vibrant, blurred shapes of masked figures are replaced by stark, empty alleyways, and the grim, unadorned facades of buildings, their colors muted in the gray dawn light. A discarded mask, a grotesque, grinning face, lies half-submerged in a puddle, its momentary power drained, now just a damp piece of papier-mâché. You feel a profound physical weariness settle over you, a heavy cloak after the fleeting lightness of anonymity. You rub a hand over your face, feeling the familiar contours of your own skin, and the lingering scent of stale wine and perfume from the night. It's a ghost of the abandon, a faint memory of the exhilarating freedom. Your senses, dulled by exhaustion, register the raw reality, the cold stone, the biting dampness, the taste of bitter regret mingling with the lingering sweetness on your tongue. The temporary world of inversion, where identities could be shed and desires pursued without consequence, has vanished with the dawn, leaving behind only the stark, unchanging landscape of everyday life. You glance down at your own clothes, no longer shimmering silk but your familiar, practical tunic, slightly rumpled, bearing the faint scent of 1,000 forgotten encounters. The weight of your own identity, once so effortlessly cast aside, now settles back upon your shoulders, heavy and demanding. You see a lone street sweeper, his face etched with the weariness of 1,000 dawns, methodically pushing aside the detritus of the night before. His movements are slow, deliberate, a stark, unromantic counterpoint to the wild dance that just hours ago consumed this very space. He doesn't look up, too accustomed to the cycle of euphoria and aftermath. The vibrant chaos, the intoxicating anonymity, the brief, glorious escape. It all feels like a dream, a fleeting, almost cruel illusion. The emptiness is palpable, a hollow ache in your chest, a stark contrast to the heightened sensations of the night. The city itself seems to sigh, exhaling the last wisps of festivity, preparing to resume its ordinary, demanding rhythm. The brief suspension of rules has ended, and the constraints of status, of expectation, of self, return with a quiet, undeniable force. You realize that even the most fervent, unrestrained escape from reality is always, inevitably, followed by a sober, sometimes painful, return to the unchanging burdens of the self, leaving you to grapple with the stark contrast between fleeting joy and enduring reality. The searing, dry heat hits your face first, a sudden, oppressive wave that makes your skin prickle and your eyes water. You flinch, instinctively raising a hand to shield yourself. The air is thick, acrid, with the unmistakable stench of burning wood and something else, something cloying and sickening, that you immediately recognize as burning flesh. Your stomach churns, threatening to revolt. You're pressed into a silent, grim crowd in the city square. The cobblestones cool beneath your worn boots, but the heat from the pyre, radiating outward, is undeniable, relentless. Your gaze is drawn, compelled, to the center of the square. A tower of rough-hewn logs, stacked high, blazes furiously, sending plumes of black smoke curling into the gray sky. Tied to the stake at its heart, a figure, already consumed by the flames, is slowly, horrifyingly, reduced to ash. The roar of the fire is a living, devouring sound, punctuated by the angry shouts of the crowd, their voices a chilling chorus of condemnation. You hear cries of heretic and blasphemer echoing through the square, each word a hammer blow against the silence of your own dread. You feel the overwhelming, collective fury of the mob pressing in on you, their righteous indignation, a palpable force. Their faces, contorted with rage and fear, are illuminated by the flickering, demonic light of the flames. You notice a woman next to you, her jaw clenched, her eyes fixed on the inferno with a mixture of terror and grim satisfaction. Her hand, clutching a wooden crucifix, trembles. The heat intensifies, making your skin feel dry and tight, as if being baked alive. This is the ultimate, brutal consequence of daring to think differently, of questioning the established order, of embracing a new idea too passionately. You recall the whispered debates in clandestine corners, the forbidden texts, the intellectual vertigo of a world turned upside down. This pyre is the terrifying answer to those questions, a stark, visceral reminder of the boundaries that cannot be crossed. The searing heat is not just external. It burns into your very soul, leaving a cold, hollow ache. The stench becomes almost unbearable, a metallic sweetness that you can taste at the back of your throat. You try to look away, but your eyes are glued to the spectacle, to the dying embers of a human life, extinguished in the name of purity. The thought of that individual, their defiance, their final moments, fills you with a profound sense of both horror and a chilling, reluctant admiration. The fire devours, purifies, consumes, but it also leaves behind an indelible, terrifying mark on all who witness its destructive power. You realize that even in an age supposedly defined by new thought and discovery, the fear of change and the fierce grip of tradition can manifest in the most brutal, destructive ways, using the ultimate fire to burn away not just dissenters, but the very possibility of open, unconstrained inquiry. The sharp crackle and pop of burning wood fills the cold air, rising above the chants of the friars and the frightened murmurs of the crowd. You're standing on the piazza, a chilling wind whipping at your cloak, but the heat from the towering bonfire before you is intense, driving you back a step. The air is thick with the scent of scorching paper, melting wax, and the acrid smell of burning fabrics, mingled with a strange sweetness, like expensive perfume turning foul in the flames. Your eyes sting from the smoke, and you cough, a dry, ragged sound that's swallowed by the commotion. Your gaze sweeps across the colossal pyre, a grotesque mountain of discarded beauty and knowledge. Tapestries, rich with gilded thread, shrivel and blacken, their vibrant colors twisting into ash. Fine paintings, once carefully rendered with precious pigments, dissolve into smoke, their expressions forever lost. Sculptures of human forms, once celebrated for their lifelike grace, crack and shatter as the heat consumes them. Costly mirrors explode with sharp, percussive sounds, sending fragments showering into the roaring inferno. And then there are the books. Hundreds, thousands of them, bound in leather and filled with the wisdom of the ancients. The daring thoughts of new philosophers, the lyrical verses of poets, all fed to the hungry flames, their pages curling, blackening, and disappearing in puffs of white smoke. You feel the overwhelming, zealous fervor of the crowd. Their faces, illuminated by the orange glow of the fire, are a mix of terrified devotion and self-righteous satisfaction. Friars, their voices hoarse, exhort them to cast away their vanities, to purify their souls in this ritualistic destruction. You see people, their hands trembling, throwing their own cherished possessions into the blaze. Dice, playing cards, cosmetics, elegant garments, even musical instruments, each offering a small personal sacrifice to the monstrous appetite of the fire. A cold tremor runs through you, a deep, unsettling fear. This isn't just about burning objects. It's about burning ideas, burning freedom, burning the very impulse for beauty and inquiry that has begun to define this age. You think of the hidden classical texts, the artist's burning lungs, the intellectual vertigo, the uncontainable anxiety of viral ideas. This bonfire is the terrifying, absolute response to all of it. A brutal attempt to purge the world of anything that deviates from a rigid, unforgiving moral path. The crackling wood is the sound of an entire culture's burgeoning self-expression being violently silenced. The heat becomes unbearable, forcing you to retreat further. But the image of the burning books, the dissolving beauty, is seared into your mind. The air is thick with ash, tiny flakes settling on your clothes like falling snow, each one a fragment of a lost thought, a silenced voice, a destroyed piece of humanity's burgeoning self-awareness. You realize that the quest for purity, when taken to its fervent extreme, can become a terrifying engine of destruction, consuming not just the perceived vices, but also the very soul and progress of an entire age, leaving behind only the chilling emptiness of uniformity. A thick, greasy smell assaults your nostrils the moment you push aside the heavy canvas flap that serves as a door. It's a pungent mix of stale oil, rendered animal fat, and the metallic tang of unwashed tools, all overlaid with the sharp, almost painful scent of turpentine and fresh plaster. Your boots crunch on sawdust and tiny metal filings scattered across the packed earth floor. This is not the pristine studio of a mere painter. It's a chaotic, grimy laboratory, humming with unseen energies. You step further inside, your eyes struggling to adjust to the dim, dusty light filtering through high, small windows. Everywhere you look, there's an explosion of half-finished projects. Giant canvases lean precariously against walls, their painted faces obscured by shrouds. Intricate wooden models of flying machines hang from the ceiling, their delicate mechanisms gleaming with a thin film of grease. Anatomical drawings, disturbingly realistic, share space on a workbench with complex gears and levers, all coated in a fine layer of grime. You run a tentative finger over a polished wooden surface, feeling the sticky residue of oil and dust. You find him in the center of it all, a figure whose hands are stained with ink, charcoal, and something vaguely mechanical. This is Leonardo. He's hunched over a drawing table, not sketching an angel, but meticulously drafting a blueprint for a water pump, his brow furrowed in concentration. Around him, apprentices move with a quiet, practiced efficiency, each engaged in their own messy, practical tasks. Grinding pigments in a mortar, hammering at a piece of copper, carefully cleaning a series of delicate lenses. The constant, low hum of activity, punctuated by the occasional clang of metal or the soft scratch of a quill on parchment, fills the air. You notice the smears of charcoal on Leonardo's cheek, the way his fingernails are rimmed with various colors and grime. He pauses, runs a hand through his perpetually disheveled hair, and then picks up a small, intricately carved gear. He turns it over in his fingers, his eyes alight with a childlike curiosity, a profound, almost hungry fascination with its function, its potential. The sheer breadth of his interests, the chaotic intermingling of art, science, and engineering, is overwhelming, a sensory overload that hints at a mind that sees no boundaries, no discrete disciplines, only a vast interconnected web of possibility. The air in the workshop crackles with a raw, undeniable energy, an almost palpable sense of creation that goes beyond simple aesthetics. This isn't just about making beautiful things. It's about understanding how everything works, about tearing apart the old world and rebuilding it from the ground up, with grease-stained hands and an insatiable intellect. The grime, the chaos, the smells, they are the essential byproducts of a mind constantly pushing the boundaries of human endeavor. You realize that true genius often thrives not in pristine, ordered spaces, but in a glorious, messy crucible of constant experimentation, where the lines between art and science blur, and every unanswered question fuels an insatiable hunger for understanding. A dull, metallic clang echoes through the workshop as a heavy tool is dropped, not in anger, but in sheer, profound frustration. The air, still thick with the scent of stale oil and turpentine, feels heavy, charged with a palpable tension. You're watching Leonardo, no longer hunched over a blueprint, but standing before one of his magnificent flying machines, his shoulders slumped, his usually vibrant eyes shadowed with exhaustion and a deep, unsettling disappointment. You see the intricate details of the contraption: delicate wooden ribs, stretched canvas wings, cunningly devised gears, and pedals designed to mimic the beating of a bird's wings. It is a masterpiece of design, a testament to unparalleled vision. You run your hand over a smoothly carved strut, feeling the cold, silent truth of its inertness. It looks perfect, utterly convincing in its potential, yet it lies grounded, stubbornly refusing to obey the fundamental laws of the air, remaining a beautiful, silent testament to an unfulfilled dream. You recall the numerous tests, the hopeful attempts, the frantic adjustments, each one ending in the same disheartening thud against the earth. You remember the excitement in his voice as he described the mechanics of flight, the precise calculations, the belief that human ingenuity could conquer the very sky. Now that excitement is replaced by a profound weariness. He gestures with an ink-stained hand towards a broken piece of a mechanism, his movements slow and heavy, as if the weight of gravity itself has settled onto his spirit. His apprentices, usually buzzing with activity, move with a subdued quietness, their faces reflecting their master's somber mood. They gather around the grounded machine, checking joints, tightening ropes, their efforts feeling futile, a desperate dance around an undeniable failure. You hear the soft groan of wood settling, the subtle creak of canvas under its own weight, sounds that seem to underscore the machine's stubborn refusal to take flight. The grease on your hands feels cold, a grim reminder of the many hours of labor, the endless trial and error that have led to this moment of frustrated silence. You watch as Leonardo sighs, the deep, weary sound that seems to carry the weight of impossible ambitions. He runs his hand over one of the canvas wings, his touch almost a caress, a final lingering hope. But the wing remains unmoving, unresponsive, a beautiful, inanimate object trapped by the very physics he so painstakingly sought to understand and overcome. The workshop, usually a crucible of intense creativity, now feels like a tomb for 1,000 brilliant yet unrealized ideas. The dream of human flight, so grand and awe-inspiring on parchment, remains a painful, elusive ghost. You realize that even the most groundbreaking intellect, with the boldest vision and tireless dedication, can be brought to its knees by the stubborn, unforgiving truths of reality, leaving you to grapple with the profound, humbling frustration of dreams that simply refuse to take wing. The metallic, coppery taste of rage fills your mouth, thick and acrid, mingling with the dry dust that coats your tongue. It's a primal taste, sharper than any iron, rising from deep within your gut. The air around you is a suffocating cloud of wood smoke, burning thatch, and the raw animal scent of terrified, angry bodies. A deafening roar, a collective bellow of long-suppressed fury, erupts from the throng of peasants surging around you, their pitchforks and farming tools glinting menacingly in the flickering light of burning manor houses. Your own heart pounds a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of adrenaline and desperate, righteous anger. You are swept forward by the irresistible momentum of the mob, your rough boots sinking into the churned mud, feeling the chaotic rhythm of hundreds of feet pounding the earth. Faces, contorted with years of injustice and the fresh sting of recent atrocities, flash past you. You see a woman, her hair unbound, her eyes blazing with an almost otherworldly fire, raising a crude scythe above her head. A young man, barely older than a boy, clutches a stone, his knuckles white, his breath coming in ragged gasps. This isn't an organized army. It's a raw, elemental force, fueled by centuries of quiet suffering, now unleashed with terrifying, unbridled power. A guttural scream tears from someone nearby as a heavy door is smashed inward, splinters flying into the air. You hear the terrified squeals of livestock, the crash of expensive furniture, the shouts of despair from the manor's few remaining guards. The coppery taste intensifies, a visceral connection to the violence unfolding around you. You feel the thrill of communal anger, the intoxicating release of years of silent resentment, now given voice and action. There's a terrifying exhilaration in being part of this surging, destructive wave, a primal sense of power, finally grasped. You watch as a richly embroidered banner, bearing a lord's crest, is torn down from its pole, trampled into the mud, and then set alight, its fine silk shriveling into nothingness. The smell of burning wool and singed feathers is sharp, distinct. This is not about negotiation, not about pleas for mercy. This is about dismantling, about destroying the very symbols of their oppression. Your hands, calloused and accustomed to working the soil, feel heavy, capable of more than just planting and harvesting. They are instruments of this raw, visceral justice. The chaos is absolute, deafening, blinding. Yet, amidst the destruction, there's a strange, almost terrifying clarity. You know this can't last, that retribution will be swift and brutal. But for this moment, in the searing heat and blinding smoke, there is a release, a powerful, undeniable assertion of human dignity, however fleeting. You realize that when the burdens of existence become too heavy and hope is extinguished, the human spirit, pushed to its absolute limit, will sometimes ignite into a furious, destructive flame, seeking not change, but raw, unadulterated vengeance, regardless of the cost. A cold, metallic taste, like stale ashes and bitter disappointment, settles on your tongue. It's a taste that speaks of betrayal, of a hope that has turned to dust. You're huddled on a damp, muddy field, the wind biting and raw, bringing with it the distant, sickening scent of smoke, and something else, something cloying and sweet, the smell of freshly spilled blood. Your body aches, not just from the cold or the meager food, but from a profound weariness that reaches deep into your very soul. The joyous, rallying cries of freedom, so fervent just weeks ago, are gone, replaced by the low, guttural moans of the wounded. You watch as a contingent of armored knights, their polished steel glinting cruelly under the overcast sky, ride slowly across the field. These aren't the Lord's men, but the forces of the very reformers who preached against tyranny and injustice, who promised a new age of spiritual and earthly liberty. Their banners, emblazoned with symbols of reform, now flutter over a landscape of shattered dreams and broken bodies. You see the cold, impassive faces of the mounted soldiers, their lances held steady, their orders clear. They are here to quell the peasant uprising, to restore order, to re-establish a hierarchy that had merely shifted its spiritual allegiance, not its earthly power. A deep, hollow ache forms in your chest. The words of the reformers, printed on those cheap pamphlets, once ignited a fervent hope in your heart. A world where all men were equal before God, where the burdens of the common folk would be lightened, where justice would prevail. You believed. You fought. You suffered. And now, this. The very figures who decried the old system now brutally enforce a new one, just as oppressive, just as uncaring. You feel the profound injustice of it all, a crushing weight that makes your shoulders slump. Your gaze fall to the muddy ground. You see a group of your fellow peasants, their faces gaunt, their eyes wide with fear and despair, being rounded up, their hands bound with rough rope. They offer no resistance, no fight left in them. Their looks of utter defeat are a mirror of your own shattered expectations. The coppery scent of lingering violence mixes with the damp earth, a stark, visceral reminder of the terrible cost of their belief. The promise of a better world, a righteous rebellion, has been ruthlessly crushed, not by the old enemy, but by the very hands that once offered salvation. The cold mud seeps into your clothing, chilling you to the bone, a physical manifestation of the cold truth that has settled in your heart. The grand words of reformation, of spiritual rebirth and earthly freedom, proved to be just that. Words, ultimately serving the ambitions of a new elite, leaving the common man exactly where he always was, under the heel of power, simply with a different banner overhead. You realize that even the most fervent movements for change can be tragically co-opted, betraying their initial promise and leaving those who fought for a better world with nothing but the bitter taste of broken hope and the crushing weight of an unchanged reality. A sharp, acrid smoke, burning the back of your throat, immediately assails your senses the moment you step into the shadowed, cramped alchemist's laboratory. It's a pungent mix of sulfur, something vaguely metallic, and the earthy smell of dried herbs, all layered over the faint, unsettling odor of cooked human waste. Your eyes water, and you instinctively raise a hand to your mouth, trying to cough away the noxious fumes, but they seem to cling to your very lungs. The air is thick, hot, and heavy with the promise of transformation, or perhaps disaster. You stumble through the gloom, your boots scraping against scattered pieces of broken pottery and dried reagents on the stone floor. The only light comes from a massive glowing furnace at the heart of the room, its intense heat radiating outward, making your face prickle with sweat. Glass retorts, bubbling with strange colored liquids, perch precariously on tripods over smaller flames. Elaborate alembics, their intricate coils gleaming faintly, hiss and steam. The constant, low murmur of boiling liquids and the crackle of burning embers create a hypnotic, unsettling soundtrack to this clandestine pursuit. You find the alchemist, a man with haunted eyes and hands stained with countless chemicals, hunched over a crucible, stirring its contents with a long iron rod. His face is illuminated by the furnace's fiery glow, revealing beads of sweat on his brow, a feverish intensity in his gaze. He wears no protective gear, his robe singed and patched, a testament to countless experiments, countless failures. You see the subtle tremor in his hand, a physical manifestation of his desperate, unyielding quest for the elusive philosopher's stone, for the secret to transforming base metals into gold, or perhaps even life itself. You feel the profound tension in the air, a desperate hope mingled with the constant threat of explosion, of noxious fumes, of utter failure. You watch as he adds a pinch of shimmering powder to the crucible, and the liquid inside instantly shifts color, from a dull gray to a startling, vibrant green, releasing another plume of acrid smoke that makes your head spin. The taste of ambition, raw and potent, seems to linger on your tongue, a phantom sensation. He glances up, his eyes meeting yours for a fleeting moment, a silent plea for understanding, for shared belief in the impossible. Then he quickly returns to his work, his gaze fixed on the bubbling, shifting contents of the crucible, as if the very secrets of the universe might be coaxed from that fiery vessel. The intense heat from the furnace, the noxious fumes, the endless cycle of trial and error. It all speaks of an unyielding human drive to master nature, to unlock its most profound mysteries, no matter the cost, no matter how many failures pave the way. You realize that the relentless pursuit of ultimate knowledge, of a single, transformative secret, can become a blinding obsession, forcing you to endure endless discomfort and embrace dangerous risks, all for the fleeting promise of a breakthrough that might forever reshape the boundaries of human possibility. The acrid smoke stings your throat, still clinging to the fabric of your clothes, but a deeper, more profound weariness now permeates the air in the alchemist's lab. The furnace, once a vibrant heart of fiery ambition, now glows with a dull, tired orange, its heat less intense. The bubbling retorts have quieted. The steaming alembics stand mostly inert, their liquids having long since yielded no miraculous transformations, only familiar chemical reactions. You feel a profound, heavy silence in the room, broken only by the soft, rhythmic dripping of condensation from the ceiling, each drop a tiny, mocking echo of time's relentless passage. You watch the alchemist, his face now gaunt and etched with a profound exhaustion, slowly empty the contents of a crucible. It's not shimmering gold, not the legendary philosopher's stone, but a handful of dull, inert ash and slag, utterly worthless. His fingers, once so precise, now tremble slightly as he sifts through the residue, a gesture of desperate hope turning to ritualistic disappointment. You see the deep lines around his eyes, the subtle tremor in his hand, signs of countless sleepless nights, endless trials, and the slow, grinding erosion of fervent belief. The room itself feels heavy, with the weight of unfulfilled promises. Shelves are crammed with dusty jars of exotic minerals, dried herbs, and obscure animal parts, each a testament to a grand, ambitious theory, now simply forgotten relics. Scrolls filled with intricate diagrams and cryptic symbols lie scattered on tables, their ink faded, their promises unkept. This isn't just a workshop. It's a monument to an obsessive, lifelong quest that has, thus far, yielded nothing but disappointment. You feel the cold, hard reality of this failure pressing down on you, a stark contrast to the initial, intoxicating promise of limitless power. He glances at you, his eyes holding a profound, almost heartbreaking emptiness, a weariness that goes beyond physical fatigue. There's no anger, no grand pronouncement, just a quiet, deep-seated resignation. His mouth opens as if to speak, but no words come out, only a long, shuddering sigh that seems to carry the accumulated weight of his vanished hopes, his spent life. He picks up a small, smooth stone, turning it over and over in his hand, as if still seeking some hidden truth within its mundane surface. The promise of eternal life, of endless wealth, of unlocking the divine secrets of creation. All these grand ambitions now lie scattered like dust on the floor, ephemeral and elusive. The profound desire to transcend human limitations, to find God not through faith but through scientific mastery, has culminated in this quiet, almost unbearable stillness. The lingering taste of chemical failure, of base elements stubbornly refusing to be transformed, is sharp and bitter in your mouth. You realize that while the human spirit endlessly strives for transcendence and ultimate mastery, some mysteries stubbornly resist even the most fervent, lifelong pursuit, leaving you to confront the humbling, inescapable limits of human endeavor, and the profound silence that follows when even the grandest ambitions finally turn to ash. A faint, sweetish odor, like decaying flowers trying to mask something foul, drifts through the heavy velvet hangings of the royal bedchamber. It mingles with the cloying scent of expensive pomade and stale sweat, creating a suffocating atmosphere. You stand in the hushed presence of the king, your breath held, feeling the heavy, expectant silence of the few courtiers present. The light, filtered through richly stained glass windows, casts a somber, almost morbid glow on the lavish room. You watch as the king, a figure of immense power, shifts restlessly on his massive, ornate bed. His face, usually a mask of regal authority, is now pale and drawn, etched with a profound, unspoken agony. Sweat beads on his brow, despite the coolness of the chamber. You hear a faint, almost imperceptible groan escape his lips, a raw sound of suffering that he quickly tries to suppress, twisting his features into a grimace of pain. The heavy silk sheets, once pristine, are now rumpled, betraying a night of restless torment. You feel a profound sense of discomfort, a chill that has nothing to do with the room's temperature. The air itself feels thick with suppressed anxiety, with the knowledge of a hidden, insidious torment that gnaws at the very foundation of the kingdom. You notice the slight tremor in his hand as he reaches for a goblet of spiced wine, his fingers adorned with heavy, jeweled rings. His movements are slow, deliberate, each gesture a battle against an unseen enemy. A court physician, his face grave, stands at the foot of the bed, his eyes fixed on the king with a look of helpless concern, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. His eyes, usually keen and commanding, are now clouded with a desperate weariness, a distant, pained glaze. He tries to sit upright, to assert some semblance of his former majesty, but a sudden, sharp intake of breath, a subtle wince of pain, betrays the effort. His rich nightshirt, though spotless, seems to hang loosely on his frame, hinting at a recent, alarming loss of weight. You glimpse a faint, almost imperceptible rash on his neck, quickly hidden by the shadow of his chin, a chilling visual clue to the hidden, agonizing disease that is slowly consuming him. The heavy, gilded crown on the bedside table, a symbol of absolute power, seems utterly meaningless in the face of such raw, debilitating pain. It cannot heal, cannot protect, cannot even offer comfort. The unspoken truth of his suffering, the quiet, terrifying knowledge of the incurable illness, hangs in the air like a shroud, casting a long, dark shadow over the glittering court. The grandeur of the bedchamber, the opulence, the deferential silence, all serve only to amplify the terrible, isolated agony of the man upon the bed. You realize that even the most powerful monarchs, elevated above all others, are ultimately vulnerable to the same fragile mortality as any commoner, confronting their unseen agonies in a profound, isolating silence, far removed from the public spectacle of their reign. The heavy, cloying scent of incense, mixed with the faint, unsettling odor of illness, fills the grand council chamber. It's a desperate attempt to mask the pervasive smell of fear and decay that permeates the very stones of the palace. You stand in the shadows, an unseen observer, as the royal court gathers, their faces grim, their whispers hushed and urgent. The light, filtering through thick leaded windows, casts long, ominous shadows that seem to dance with the collective anxiety. You watch as the king, now a shadow of his former self, is supported into his throne by two grim-faced attendants. His movements are agonizingly slow, each step a visible battle against his failing body. His once regal robes now hang loosely on his emaciated frame, emphasizing his fragility. His face, once strong and commanding, is now a mask of pain, marred by subtle lesions that his royal barber attempts to conceal with heavy cosmetic powders. You hear a faint, almost involuntary gasp from a nearby courtier, quickly stifled. The unseen agony is no longer entirely unseen. A profound sense of vulnerability settles over the room. The health of the king is the health of the kingdom, and this king is clearly failing. You see the anxious glances exchanged between powerful nobles, their faces betraying their calculations, their hidden ambitions. The unspoken question hangs heavy in the air. Who will succeed him? And what will that mean for their own fortunes, their own power? You notice a subtle shift in allegiance, a deferential bow aimed a fraction longer at a rising duke, a fleeting, almost imperceptible nod towards a rival faction. The body politic is decaying, mirroring the monarch's own decline. You feel the palpable tension, a quiet, almost desperate anticipation of what is to come. The grand gilded trappings of the throne room, the elaborate tapestries depicting valiant ancestors, the heavy jeweled crown, all seem fragile, almost mocking, in the face of this stark human frailty. The crown itself, once a symbol of divine right and unshakable continuity, now rests on a head racked with pain, its future uncertain, its legacy threatened by the very bloodline it represents. The whispers grow louder, more agitated, speaking of regents, of disputed successions, of alliances fractured and reforged. The scent of fear is sharp, metallic, a taste you can almost detect on your tongue. The future of the kingdom, once so seemingly stable, now feels as precarious as the king's next breath. The slow, agonizing decay of his body is more than a personal tragedy. It is a visible, terrifying symbol of a deeper sickness, a corruption that threatens to unravel the entire fabric of power. You realize that even the most sacred institutions and the longest established bloodlines are ultimately fragile, vulnerable to the biological realities of human existence, and that their decline can unleash a terrifying cascade of ambition and chaos, undermining the very foundations of an entire era. A sudden, unexpected Galatula clang of a cymbal, followed by a rush of swirling, interwoven notes, assaults your ears, almost physically jarring. It's a cascade of sound that's both thrilling and slightly unsettling. You're seated in a grand hall, the air thick with the scent of beeswax and old wood, vibrant with the murmurs of an attentive audience. The musicians, arrayed on a raised platform, are playing something entirely new, a composition that defies the familiar, comforting harmonies you've grown accustomed to. You feel a ripple of unease, a subtle tension in your shoulders. The music is complex, its melodies intertwining in unexpected ways, creating dissonances that resolve into harmonies you hadn't anticipated. It's like listening to several conversations at once, each fascinating on its own, but demanding a new kind of attention to grasp the whole. The deep, resonant thrum of a newly introduced bass instrument underpins the soaring voices and the intricate plucking of lutes, adding a richness, a profound depth that was absent in simpler, earlier compositions. You trace the rhythm with an unconscious tap of your foot, feeling the music pulling you in directions you didn't know existed. You watch the conductor, his brow furrowed in concentration, his hands moving with an almost frantic energy, coaxing these unfamiliar sounds from his ensemble. His gaze sweeps across the musicians, urging them to blend, to contrast, to push the boundaries of what sounds right. You notice how some audience members shift uncomfortably in their seats, their faces betraying a confusion, an almost visceral rejection of these daring innovations. Others, however, lean forward, their eyes alight with a dawning appreciation, an intellectual hunger for this challenging new beauty. The music swells, then retreats, a carefully constructed tapestry of sound that paints no simple picture, tells no obvious story. It speaks of a world more complex, more nuanced, more filled with contradictory emotions than the simple, devotional plainsong of the past. The familiar comfort of predictable patterns is replaced by a thrilling, almost terrifying sense of uncharted emotional territory. The sweetness of simple melody is still there, yes, but it's interwoven with sharp, almost painful discords before resolving into something richer, more profound. You feel your own mind stretching, attempting to grasp the intricate patterns, the subtle shifts, the underlying logic of this audacious new soundscape. It's a challenge, an invitation to a deeper, more sophisticated kind of listening. This isn't just entertainment. It's an intellectual and emotional journey, pushing the very definition of harmony and beauty, suggesting that truth and beauty can exist in complexity and contradiction, not just in simple divine order. You realize that true artistic innovation often arrives not as a gentle evolution, but as a disruptive, challenging force, unsettling your ingrained assumptions, and forcing you to expand your very capacity for perception, leading you to discover beauty in places you never thought to look. A deep, reverberating crack echoes through the cavernous cathedral, not of stone, but of something far more profound and unsettling. It's the sound of ancient harmony fracturing, a dissonant chord that seems to pierce the very air, thick with the scent of old stone, damp fear, and the lingering sweetish odor of burnt wax. You're kneeling on the cold, hard flagstones, your head bowed, amidst a congregation whose faces are a mixture of fervent devotion and palpable unease. The grand, soaring arches overhead, once symbols of unwavering unity, now seem to press down, heavy with unspoken tension. You hear the priest's voice, usually a comforting drone of familiar Latin, now strained, almost desperate. He preaches not of universal salvation, but of division, of heresies that tear at the fabric of faith, of dangers that threaten the very soul of Christendom. His gestures are sharper, his tone more insistent, each word a desperate attempt to shore up crumbling foundations. You feel a prickle of anxiety on your skin, a growing chill that has nothing to do with the draft from the massive wooden doors. The comforting certainty of a singular, unquestioned truth is slowly, irrevocably eroding. You glance around at the other worshippers. Their faces, usually serene in prayer, are now furrowed with worry, their eyes darting, searching for reassurance that seems increasingly elusive. You see a woman cross herself repeatedly, her lips moving in silent, fervent prayer, as if trying to ward off an invisible threat. A man beside you, his knuckles white as he grips a worn rosary, exhales a long, shuddering breath, a sound of profound spiritual fatigue. The familiar warmth of shared belief feels colder, more distant, replaced by a sense of impending rupture. The chants of the choir, once a seamless, unified melody, now feel fractured, almost hesitant. You discern subtle variations, minor dissonances, different interpretations of the sacred texts, each a small, defiant note in what was once an unbroken harmony. The old unifying narratives are breaking apart, dissolving under the weight of new questions, new challenges, new interpretations of the divine. This isn't just a theological debate. It's a profound tearing apart of the spiritual tapestry that has bound communities, nations, and entire continents together for centuries. The chill from the flagstones creeps into your bones, a physical manifestation of the cold truth settling in your heart. The promise of a unified spiritual existence, of a shared path to salvation is being shattered, piece by agonizing piece. Each sermon, each pamphlet, each public debate acts like another blow, widening the fissures, turning neighbors into theological adversaries, and transforming sacred spaces into arenas of bitter ideological conflict. You realize that even the most deeply rooted and universally embraced beliefs are ultimately fragile, vulnerable to the relentless march of new ideas and interpretations, capable of fracturing into countless dissenting echoes, leaving you adrift in a world where even spiritual certainty is no longer a shared comfort, but a battleground. The raw, cold wind whips around you, tugging at your clothes, making your eyes water. You're perched precariously on a rough-hewn wooden beam, high above the bustling streets, feeling the dizzying vertigo of immense height. Below, the city sprawls out like an intricate map, its tiny figures bustling about their ant-like lives. The air is sharp, carrying the distant, muffled sounds of commerce, of carts rattling, and the faint, rhythmic clang of hammers. But here, high up, only the whistling wind and the groan of straining timber break the vast, unsettling silence. You glance down, and your stomach lurches. A dizzying expanse of complex scaffolding, a temporary wooden forest, stretches both above and below you, a fragile, skeletal framework against the immense, unfinished stone of a new cathedral. Each beam, each rope, each plank feels terrifyingly flimsy, yet it holds hundreds of workers, tirelessly adding stone upon stone. The smell of fresh-cut wood, damp mortar, and human sweat is strong around you, a stark contrast to the pure, thin air above. You see a stonemason, his face grim with concentration, chipping away at a block of marble, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of his hammer echoing faintly in the vast space. Another worker, burdened by a heavy basket of cut stone, slowly, painstakingly climbs a series of rickety ladders, his muscles straining with each ascent. Their lives are literally hanging by a thread, yet they move with a practiced, almost casual disregard for the gaping void beneath their feet. You feel the subtle sway of the platform as another worker moves past you, his hand brushing against your arm, a fleeting, startling contact that grounds you for a moment. Your fingers instinctively tighten on the cold, rough wood of the beam beneath you. The scale of this undertaking is immense, almost incomprehensible. This isn't just a building, it's an act of audacious faith, a testament to human ambition reaching for the heavens. But it's also a terrifying gamble, a monstrous, fragile edifice built on sweat, prayer, and the constant threat of a single misstep, a broken rope, a rotten plank that could send everything crashing down. The very foundation of what they are building, both physically and symbolically, feels profoundly unstable. You lean out slightly, trying to glimpse the top of the highest spire, still an imagined point in the vast, empty sky. The cold wind bites at your exposed skin, a constant, physical reminder of your own vulnerability, your insignificance in the face of such a monumental task. The grand vision of the completed cathedral, a symbol of divine glory, seems impossibly distant, a fragile dream suspended high above a very real, very dangerous present. You realize that reaching for the sublime, for something truly monumental, often requires not just immense vision and tireless labor, but also a terrifying embrace of vulnerability, a constant dance on the edge of the abyss, where the glory of creation is always just one step away from catastrophic collapse. The biting wind still whips around you, high on the scaffolding of the unfinished cathedral, but it now feels less like a raw physical challenge, and more like the breath of a vast, uncertain future. Your hands, still gripping the cold wood, are steady, yet a profound weariness settles into your bones, deeper than any physical fatigue. The air, thin and sharp, carries the faint, lingering scent of damp mortar and the metallic tang of newly quarried stone. But it's the unspoken questions that fill your senses, heavy and insistent. You look out over the sprawling city, a patchwork of old medieval alleys and new ambitious palazzi, all dwarfed by the immense, skeletal framework of the cathedral. It's a city striving for greatness, reaching for a new identity, but it's also a city caught between worlds. You think of the myriad experiences, the stench of progress, the lingering plague, the forbidden texts, the brutal power of the canon, the mercenary's cold gaze, the relentless search for gold, the alchemist's futility, the unseen agony of the king, the fracturing harmony of faith. And now, this monument to an ambition so vast it seems to defy time itself. You feel the weight of centuries pressing down on you, not just the past, but the crushing burden of posterity. Will this grand edifice, this age of bold ideas and ruthless ambition, be seen as a glorious rebirth, a triumph of human spirit? Or will it be remembered as a desperate, chaotic struggle, a violent unraveling of old certainties that led to profound, unsettling new anxieties? The thought is chilling, a cold hand on your heart. You are a participant, a witness, standing at a precarious juncture, acutely aware that every choice, every innovation, every brutal act of power is laying the foundation for a future none can truly foresee. You watch as the sun begins to dip towards the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows over the nascent city. The golden light catches the highest points of the scaffolding, making it seem almost ethereal, a bridge between two epochs. But it also illuminates the deep cracks in the old stones, the hurried, sometimes shoddy work of hurried construction, the immense human cost of such grand aspirations. The dizzying height is no longer just physical. It's existential, a terrifying perch between a world that is dying and a new one that is struggling, painfully, violently, to be born. The cold air fills your lungs, and you taste the bitter truth of uncertainty. The Renaissance, this supposed rebirth, feels less like a clear, triumphant dawn, and more like a midlife crisis writ large, a time of immense energy, of self-questioning, of restless innovation, but also of profound anxiety, brutal upheaval, and a constant, often agonizing tension between glorious aspiration and messy, human reality. You realize that every era, especially one claiming to be a rebirth, is ultimately a complex tapestry woven with threads of both progress and regression, of dazzling innovation and profound suffering, leaving you with the humbling, unsettling truth that every perceived golden age carries within it the seeds of its own enduring human crisis.